This is episode 19 of the Relentless Man podcast. Code, part 3. Hi, and welcome to the Relentless Man podcast. I'm your host, Christian Mojaiso, and my goal is to help men die empty, to make sure that you die having used up every ounce of potential that is trapped within you. However, to help you die empty, I will have to be very raw and brutally honest with you. So if you're easily offended, stop listening. If you're easily triggered, stop listening. If you can't handle explicit language, stop listening. If you're fragile, stop listening. Otherwise, let's dig in. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to urge you to not imitate or copy indiscriminately things that I say on this episode. Rather, what I recommend is that you turn on your brain, that you think for yourself, and make sure that the decisions that you do make are the products of your own thinking and your own decision making. Remember, don't be a follower, be a student. In this episode, we're going to continue talking about code, a code of conduct. And I describe a code of conduct to be a set of standards that you will never violate. And this code of conduct dictates how you behave in various situations. It's a sort of thing that you desperately need if you're going to realize your true potential and die empty. So let's continue. There are a bunch of questions here to answer related to a code of conduct. What is a code? Oh, wow. Okay. I actually just started tackling this question. So yes, a code is a set of standards that you will never violate. It's a set of beliefs that you'll never violate. And what's the importance of having a code? Well, one of the most important things about having a code is that it enables you to know beforehand how you're going to behave in certain situations. It makes it clear what is a no-no and what is a yes for you. So for instance, let's say you find yourself in an odd situation. Let's say something on your code of conduct is that, well, let's create two scenarios. So let's say you're at your workplace and you desperately want to rise in the ranks. You want to get promoted. Okay. And then someone offers you, let's say someone asks you to cheat and backbite and betray another member of the company in order to advance. If you don't have a code of conduct in advance, in such a situation, tempted by your desire to progress, you might decide to just throw your friends or your coworkers under the bus in order to advance. And then maybe later you'll realize what you did and you begin to feel sorry and bad about it and you begin to regret what you did. But if you had a code of conduct in advance, if you had decided what lines you're not willing to cross, what things and values you embody, then that situation doesn't happen because in advance you've already decided, look, I'm the sort of person that is not gonna betray others in order to get ahead. I'm not gonna throw people under the bus or screw them over. If you decided that beforehand, if you'd written that down in your code of conduct, then you don't have an issue. When the situation presents itself, your code already tells you what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And a code is really important because to be a relentless man, to realize your potential, you're going to be doing things that have never been done before. You're going to be doing extraordinary things. To do extraordinary things, you'll have to become an extraordinary person. And an extraordinary person has extraordinary standards. That is why you not only need a code of conduct, but the things that are on your code of conduct should be standards that are higher than the community around you. If your code of conduct is the same as the community or below what the standards of the community are, then you're really not going to realize your true potential and you're not going to do truly amazing things that push the human race forward. All right, let's move on to the next question. What are the consequences of living without a code? Yeah, so it's one of those things. If you don't have a code of conduct, what that means is that you're going to do whatever feels right in the moment. You're going to be ruled by your emotions. It also means you're going to be going wherever the wind blows. Because if you have to depend on others or your community to tell you how to behave, then you're really not going to get very far. Because in order to die empty and realize your true potential, you're going to need to be disciplined. You're going to need to do things that most people are not willing to do. Let's say your mission in life is to transform your country, and you realize the way to do that is to become, let's say, the president. Well, if your plan is to become the president, then you're going to have to do things differently. What that would mean probably is that most of your time will be spent studying the history of your country. Most of the time will be spent understanding human nature and reading about negotiation. But you see, you can't achieve this sort of goal if you don't have a code of conduct, because what would happen is at the time when you're supposed to be seated studying history, or at the time when you're supposed to be learning about negotiation, your friends will ask you to go out for a glass of beer. And then if you have no standards, well, you go out with them for a glass of beer, and now you haven't put in the practice you need to put in order to accomplish your goals. So suddenly you become the sort of person that can just be moved by the wind, the sort of person who just wavers, is like a twig that can be pushed left and right with the wind. And that is the exact opposite of what a relentless man is, because a relentless man is someone who sets the standards. A relentless man is someone who has certain codes of conduct, certain values, and certain priorities that he's not going to let the wind move him around. He's not going to let people push him around, or society, or trivial things that are happening. He's not going to let those things stop him from following his code. He's not going to let those things stop him from doing what he needs to do in order to accomplish his mission, his life, and die empty. So really, if you have no code, then you're in trouble. It's unlikely you're going to achieve anything of great value if you don't have any standards that you live by, if you don't have any standards that you follow and that you're never willing to violate. Because then the community is going to give you standards of behavior. And usually, your community standards are not enough in order to take you where you want to go as a relentless man. It's number 26 on the list. How will having a code affect my craft? So usually realizing your potential usually means picking up a craft. Maybe dancing, music, science, mathematics, business. Could be a variety of things, but very likely it involves having a craft. Now, in order to become, and usually what that means also is that to be relentless and die empty, you're going to have to become really, really, really good at something, at some craft. Well, what's going to ensure that you show up and do everything you need to do in order to become really, really good at this craft? Well, what's going to help you there is a certain set of standards that you never violate. Perhaps certain fixed practice hours. Let's say every single day you do something that moves you towards your craft. Maybe you decide, okay, I want to become an Olympic swimmer. This is my mission right now. In order to do that, I'm going to have to practice 6 hours every single day. Well, you see, that becomes a standard. That is something that you're not violating. Then you need a code in order to do this. And in fact, a code helps you to realize your craft, because once you put something in your code of conduct and say, okay, every single day I practice swimming for 6 hours. Once that's in your code, it becomes your identity. It's who you are, which means that under no circumstances do you not show up and swim for 6 hours. So suddenly you don't even really need to use willpower. Willpower usually is a sign that many things, if you make them your identity, you no longer need willpower to do them. And suddenly it becomes much easier to show up to the practice sessions and make things happen. And there are all sorts of beliefs that will enable you to become really good at your craft. Usually to be good at a craft, you need to be open to learning and criticism. Now, this is a very good thing to add on your code. For instance, I'm the sort of person who doesn't take criticism personally. I listen to the criticism and I adapt and change as a result of, if the criticism is positive and is going to help me move forward, I go with that criticism. If you have such a thing in your code of conduct, then you're going to go very far, because to become really good at a craft, you need to be the sort of person that is open to feedback and doesn't take feedback personally. And so a code of conduct here will be helping you to take feedback without trouble and proceed to improve on the weaknesses and therefore become better at your craft. Another one thing that might be on your code of conduct is, I always do my absolute best. If that's on your code of conduct, then what that means is that at every practice session, whenever you're engaging with your craft, you're gonna give your absolute best. Do your all. Do everything to stay consistent with your identity as the guy that does his best. Guess what happens if day after day, year after year, decade after decade, you always give your best? What sort of person will you be? You'll be by definition a relentless man. You'll by definition be dying empty every single day. And suddenly whatever craft you pick up, the amount of progress you'll make will be astronomical. And you'll end up not only inspiring yourself, but everybody around you. And taking people to an awesome, amazing place they've never really been before. That's really the essence of when you become really good at a craft. You begin to do things that just fill people with awe and transport them in a spiritual way to a place that is just amazing and remarkable. Obviously, I'm not like necessarily I'm not extremely good at any craft at the moment, but I've had moments where I'm in the process of learning my own craft, but I've had moments where I performed really well and I could see it in people's eyes. It's the most amazing feeling, and a code of conduct helped me to do that. Okay, run out of time. So I gotta go to the next question. Sometimes I get too excited by these things. Alright. What does leadership have to do with a code? Yes, so when you have a code of conduct, when you have a set of standards that you're never gonna violate, a set of standards that you uphold no matter what, you become a rare person. The vast majority of the human population consists of people who don't really have a code of conduct. Most people just do what they feel in the moment. Most people show up late to meetings. Most people don't do their best. Most people are satisfied doing mediocre work. Most people are satisfied being average. If you have a code of conduct, if you have standards that you uphold no matter what, you become a rare sort of person. What this means is that people begin to look up to you. They admire you because you're able to do something that they are not able to. They admire you because you have a set of values that you always uphold. And they look at you because they are not able to do that. And you just inspire them. And once you start inspiring people, once people start trying to be like you, once people start looking to you for guidance, then you become a leader. So you see, having a code and living by that code, by definition, makes you a leader. So you can't expect to have a code and not be a leader. If you're not a leader, then you don't really have a code. Right? Those things are so related. A leader has a code of conduct. He has a standard of behavior that is above everybody else's, and people look up to him for guidance in all sorts of arenas. And yet, if you have a code of conduct, then people look up to you. So you become a leader in that sense. You see, so, yeah, and especially if you're a relentless man, if you're trying to realize your potential, if you're trying to die empty, then by definition, you're gonna need to have standards that are higher than everybody else's. If you have those standards, well, what's that gonna mean is that people are gonna look up to you. You're gonna, by definition, be a leader. So as I've mentioned a lot in this series of episodes on code of conduct, a relentless man is a leader. And when you have a code, when you follow a code of conduct, you inspire people and you become a leader. So if you think you're going to be relentless and realize your potential, but avoid leadership, you're mistaken. You might as well try to do something else. So you better get used to the fact that once you get on this journey of being relentless, people are going to see you differently. And people are going to expect you to lead them. People are going to expect you to have the answers. And if you're not ready for that, then really forget about being a relentless man. Alright, next set of questions. Number 5 asks, what should be on my code? So this is a good question. Not everything deserves to be on a code of conduct. So, and one thing that if you haven't yet realized this is what I've been talking about here is that when you have a code of conduct is not the sort of thing that you need to practice becoming good at embodying. The things that are on your code of conduct are the sorts of things that you embody immediately. So for instance, if you put on your code of conduct, I am a great chess player, that's not the sort of thing you put on your code of conduct for obvious reasons, because being a chess player takes time. You have to work towards being a great chess player. And that's not a code, because a code is your identity, it's who you are. You're not a great chess player. You can work towards becoming one, but it's not who you are as a person. Things you put on your code of conduct are things that define you, that are your belief systems. Something like, I always do what I say I'm going to do. That's something that you can implement starting from now. Starting from now, you can say, every time you say something, you implement it. So you see, you can embody, a code is something you can embody now. You don't need to work towards embodying it. I'm an A student. No, that's not a good thing to put on your code, because being an A student is a skill. It's something you need to practice. It takes time to be good at. But stuff you put on your code are things you don't need to practice, things you can embody now. I never betray my friends. You don't need to practice that. That's the sort of thing you put on your code. Starting from now, you can decide, I don't betray my friends. It's just who I am. And the other thing about whatever you put on your code of conduct, it must empower people. If you have something on your code of conduct that makes people worse, that's oppressing people, then that's not a good code of conduct. If your code of conduct has something about screwing people over, about stealing from people, about being dishonest, if those are the things you have on your code of conduct, it's not a good code of conduct. Because if you're a relentless man, a person who dies empty, is a person who realizes their true potential. And this is not just your true potential in terms of a craft. It's your true potential physically, emotionally. It's especially, so it depends on what you're doing. But when it comes to, for instance, there's certain things that if you don't master them, you're not going to do your absolute best. For instance, if you don't master your emotions, if you don't learn how to do relationships with people, then there's a limit to how far you're going to go. So in order to realize your true potential and truly die empty, you're also going to have to be the sort of person that gets along with people, the sort of person that leads. And a leader inspires people. A leader makes people better, pushes them to a higher level. And so you see, if there's anything on your code of conduct that oppresses people, that depresses people, that's all about holding people back, that doesn't make the community better, then you're not going to realize your true potential. So if you have anything like that on your code of conduct, erase it now. Your code should empower you, and it should empower the community. It should make society better. It should push humanity forward, not pulling humanity or holding humanity back. All right. Next thing connected to a code of conduct. Let's see. What's the next question here? Number 33 on my list. What should I do with people who don't meet my code? So what the question here is asking is, when we talk about code of conduct, we said that as a relentless man, your code of conduct has standards that are higher than the rest of the community. If your standards are higher than the rest of the community, it means most of the community does not meet the standards. Okay? It's kind of self-evident there. What that also means is that you're going to face a lot of frustration where you have high standards, but other people are not living up to your high standards. Let's say your standard is to do an awesome, amazing job. Well, see, that's not the standard of most people in the community. In fact, most people in the community are satisfied doing an average or mediocre job, so long as they don't get fired. Well, if this is your standard, if that's what's in your code, I always do an amazing job at everything I do. If that's in your code of conduct, then you're going to have to face a situation where you have a bunch of people whose standards are lower than yours, and while you're trying to make a great product or a great performance, you're going to have people around you who are not meeting that standard, who are satisfied doing an average job or a less than average job. So how do you deal with such people? It really depends. There are many situations. Of course, if you're in a leadership position, then it's your job to set the standard. So it's your job to lead people to such an extent that they meet your standards, that they rise to the occasion. It's your job to inspire them. But maybe you're not a leader really. You don't have a position or anything like that. Maybe you're just a team member. In which case it might be kind of problematic to force people when you don't have authority over them to meet your standard. So sometimes you just have to understand the situation. So if you're trying to do an amazing job, but the people next to you are not doing an amazing job, and you don't really have the authority to make them do an amazing job, and maybe at the moment you're not inspiring them to do an amazing job, then maybe it would mean taking up more of the responsibility. It means taking those other people's job and doing it to the best of your ability, to your satisfaction. Or it might mean accepting the fact that whatever task you're doing has many moving parts and you can't control all of them. So it depends on the situation that you're dealing with. But what you don't want to do is to lower your standards or to abandon your own code in order to fit in with people. That is a weak, most depraved, dumb stuff to do. It's the sort of thing that is not going to push you, is not going to enable you to die empty. So you maintain your standards always, and usually if you do that long enough, people rise to your standards because they're inspired by you. But it's not going to happen overnight. They may not be rising to those standards, in which case you'll have to think about it and design a strategy that works, but you're definitely not going to lower yourself just to fit in with people. Actually, maybe there are a few situations where you can lower yourself, but I strongly advise against that. Abandoning your code of conduct just in order to fit in with people, just in order to be at the same level with others or to make other people feel comfortable. Yeah, that is not something I recommend, but it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. That's why I told you at the start of this episode to turn on your brain and think for yourself. Because I can't give you a recommendation, a formula that works in every situation. Alright, let's move on to the next question. What should be on everyone's code? That's an interesting question. We've looked at ideas related to this already. Your code of conduct should contain the sorts of things that move you towards your mission in life. So what this means is, as a relentless man, you have a mission, okay? And if you don't have one, I recommend that you write one down, that you try to figure out or find a mission. Usually it's something you create. It's not like there's a mission out there and you're supposed to find your mission. Usually if you just think really hard, you can create a mission that fits with you. But it's important to have a mission, because a mission, once you have a goal, a target you're moving towards, that dictates the sorts of beliefs and the sorts of ways you need to think in order to accomplish that massive goal. So, for instance, your goal might be to win 10 championships. Your goal might be to find the cure to a disease. Your mission might be, in my case, my mission is to help men die empty. That is my mission in life, is to take men who are highly ambitious but don't know how to realize their ambition and help them to realize their true potential by giving them the mindset, by teaching them how to think in order to realize their huge ambitions. That's my mission in life. Once I have a mission like that, I suddenly know what beliefs I need. For instance, one belief is I can't talk to people about dying empty if I'm not dying empty myself. So now I have to push myself. I have to really improve myself. Another thing is, if I'm gonna give you the mindset you need in order to die empty, well, I need to know what that mindset is. What that means is that I need to read a heck of a lot. So I make sure that every single week I may read a minimum of 2-3 books. That's minimum. Usually it's actually much more than that. So because I have a mission, a clear mission, I know what I need to do. And that's what would happen to you as well. If you have a mission, then it also tells you instantly what things to add on your code of conduct. So if your mission is to create a great technology company that, let's say, will transform education, then one thing you need to do is to become a leader. So most of the values and belief systems that a leader needs to have will be on your code of conduct. Maybe you believe in empowering people. You believe in mentoring people. Those are all things. Your mission is a good way. If you have a goal and a mission, it becomes clear what you need to put on your code of conduct, because it's just the necessity to realize your mission will push you to find the most essential things. And a code of conduct is something that evolves. That is, you add more things to it, and you may take away things that you thought worked but actually don't work. Is there maybe another way in which you can decide what to put on your code of conduct? Well, another way is maybe you could use your mission to tell you what to put on your code of conduct. Another one is you could look at someone who's doing something related to what you're trying to do, and you look at the values that they hold dear, and then you adopt those values for yourself. So maybe you want to be a great investor, then you watch someone like Warren Buffett. You look at how he organizes his day, maybe the fact that he reads a couple of hours every day, and that you add that on your code of conduct. I read 4 hours every day. And that might tell you what to do, because if you look at someone who's excelling in a field you're trying to excel in, there are certain beliefs that took them there. Very likely those same beliefs, if you adopted them, you'd also be able to get where they need to get. And so that would tell you what to put on your code of conduct. So, and there's probably many other ways. I can't think of any other ways in which you decide what to put on your code of conduct. But yeah, it's up to you to think about it, and you could come up with other ideas. And if I think up other ideas and I have some space, I'll probably tell you more about that. Or you could let me know. How about that? Okay, we just run out of time. Okay, next question. Number 12 asks, is there such a thing as a bad code? Yes, so a bad code is a code of... There are many things that would make a bad code of conduct. For instance, if you have a set of beliefs that you don't follow, that's a bad code because you're not following your code. Another thing that would make a code of conduct bad is if it contains beliefs in it that disempower people, that involve taking advantage of people, stealing from people, putting down people, disempowering people as opposed to empowering them. If you have any belief that moves humanity backwards or holds humanity back, then that's a bad belief to have on your code of conduct. It in fact immediately disqualifies you from being a relentless man and from dying empty, because part of dying empty is serving people. Is there, though, another thing that would make your code of conduct bad? Well, yes, if you have beliefs in your code of conduct that do not move you towards your goals. So, for instance, let's say you have something in your code of conduct that says you need to hang out with your friends for 12 hours a day. And let's say at the same time you're trying to die empty. So you want to become, let's say, a great scientist. See, it's going to be hard for you to become a great scientist if you're hanging out with your friends for 12 hours a day, because you need to dedicate time to practice. So this becomes a bad code of conduct in the sense that it contains a belief, in this case, spending 12 hours a day with your friends, that is holding you back from achieving your mission, which is becoming a great scientist and transforming the world that way. Another thing that would make a code of conduct bad, if the code of conduct is the sort of thing that you can't embody immediately. It's the sort of thing that you need to work towards. A code of conduct is not something you become good at. It's something you can embody now. So if something on your code of conduct is like, I'm a great soccer player, then that's stupid. The reason why that's a problem is because becoming a soccer player is a sort of thing that takes time to do. So that's not really a code. You can't embody that. It's a sort of thing you practice, and you can never really be, you can always get better as a soccer player. A better thing to put on your code of conduct is the sort of thing you can embody now. Maybe I wake up at 8 a.m. That's something you can embody right now. You don't need to practice doing it. At 8 a.m., starting from today at 8 a.m., you can wake up and do whatever you need to do. So that's something that's a good thing to put on your code of conduct, as opposed to things that are skills or things that you need to work towards. The things you put on the code of conduct are things that are beliefs and things you can embody right now. I don't steal. You don't need to practice not stealing. Starting right now, you can decide not to steal and embody. Your code of conduct should be something you can embody right now. That's how I would put it. So there are many things that would make a code of conduct bad. And very possibly you can think up more things that make a bad code of conduct. If you do think up something else, please do let me know. Alright. Next question. Should I tell others about my code? Okay. Whether or not you tell other people about your code of conduct depends mostly on you. So you don't necessarily need to tell people what your code of conduct is. It's the sort of thing you can just embody. You don't need to tell people that, oh yeah, I always show up on time. Because the way they'd figure that out is if you always show up on time, then you won't need to tell them that. They can observe it. You may not need to tell people that I care about people. That's the sort of thing they just see. They'll notice that you're caring and they'll be like, oh yeah, this guy cares. Oh, maybe I'm a hard worker. You don't need to tell people you're a hard worker. If you're a hard worker, people will see it and they'll be able to observe it. However, there is value in talking to people about your code of conduct, because part of it is, not everybody works this way, but part of telling people about your code of conduct is that it places social pressure on you. And this might be the sort of thing you need, because if you go on Facebook and tell people that you are a hardworking person, then suddenly now all your friends know about it. So they are on the lookout for cases when you're lazy, and they'll tell you you're lazy. Didn't you say you're hardworking? And that might be a useful thing, because the social pressure in this case would make you embody your code more. It could do that, or it could make you do the opposite. So it's important to know who you are as a person and what sorts of things work. So for instance, when I do this podcast, I talk about things on my code of conduct. For instance, if I say something, I'm going to do it. If another thing that's on my code of conduct is, I never ask you to do things that I don't do myself. I embody my message. When I tell you to die empty, I am dying empty every single day. Once I make that known to you and as my community, well, suddenly I have to live up to those standards. So that also creates social pressure for me, because I can't be telling you or giving you tools to die empty if I'm not dying empty myself. I can't be telling you to be a relentless man if I'm not a relentless man every single day. So that creates social pressure that enables me to stick to my code, because I must embody it as a leader of the community. So this is one advantage that telling people your code gives, because now suddenly you're not only holding yourself accountable to your code of conduct, but the entire community is. But this might not be the way you want to do it, because there's a lot of value in, rather than telling people what your conduct is, just having them deduce it for themselves by observing how you behave. So I'm not going to give you a clear cookie cutter formula for whether you should tell your code of conduct or not. It all depends on your personality and the conditions under which you find yourself. Alright, another question. Let's see. How do I create a code? So this is again one of those questions where there is not one way to create a code of conduct. So you're now convinced that you need a code of conduct in order to die empty. But then you're wondering, well, how do I create one? There are a variety of ways. Let me see if I can spout out a couple of them before I run out of time. One way to create a code of conduct is look at someone in the community that you admire. Maybe there's someone who's doing what you want to do, or there's some leader in the community, a relentless person that you really admire and want to be like. Well, if you look at that person and look at the values that they have, whatever beliefs they hold dear, it's very likely that those beliefs are the sorts of beliefs you need to have in order to accomplish your goals and die empty. So if you get those people's beliefs and you add them to your code and you try to live by them, then you can be able to adapt from there and figure out some things, some beliefs that other people have may not work for you. So in that case, you'll either mold them, adjust them, or get rid of them. And then some of them actually do work and you'll be able to keep them. Another way to determine what to put on your code of conduct is by clearly defining what your mission in life is. If you know what your mission in life is, then you also know what beliefs to have. So, for instance, if, as we're talking before, if your mission is to be a great Olympic swimmer, then automatically you also know certain things that are going to be on your code. For instance, your diet. You're going to have to eat as healthily as possible. That will be probably something that's on your code of conduct. You'll have to swim maybe 5 hours a day. That will be on your code of conduct. Maybe you'll no longer drink alcohol, or you drink alcohol once a year. All those things suddenly tell you, all those beliefs, the belief system becomes clear because you've defined your mission and you know where you're trying to go. Another way to create a code of conduct is sometimes you might be a member of a religion that has a set of beliefs that would actually help you to accomplish your goals and also empowers people. Then in that case, you could just look at your religion and pick out the beliefs that work or embody the beliefs of your religion. So, and many religions do have some really great beliefs like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Zen, Stoicism. Oh yeah, there's also philosophies. There are certain philosophies that will help you that could be the basis of a great code of conduct. For instance, Stoicism, as I mentioned before, Stoicism is it's a philosophy, but it's a practical philosophy. It tells you how to deal with your emotions, how to handle stress, how to deal with people, how to work on your craft, how to deal with loss. It's a set of belief systems that actually, if you embodied these belief systems, you'd be an admirable person and you will be able to die empty. So that's another great source of beliefs to put on your code of conduct. Another one is a book called the Daodejing. That's a powerful book written 5,000 years ago by this really smart Chinese guy called Lao Tzu. And in this book, he writes principles of how to live. If you pick things from the Daodejing and embody them, then that's also a good source of code of conduct. So the world is overflowing with sources for good code of conduct. Decide what works for you. But ultimately, your code of conduct is something that's always changing. You add things to it, you remove things to it, you refine things. And how do you know what to add, remove, refine? Well, a good way to tell is in the arena of life, based on your results. If a code of conduct is giving you results, then keep it. If it's not, make a change. Don't just follow something because Christian said you should do it or somebody else. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. Remember that this is your podcast and my goal is to serve you. I'm here to make sure that you have the mindset you need to have in order to realize your true potential and die empty. In order to do that, I'd need to get as honest feedback from you as possible. If there's something you don't like, if you have a comment, or if you just have a question, a declaration, please let me know about it. That way I could make this podcast better and make sure that you have all the tools you need in order to die empty. Thank you very much once again for listening and hope you have a relentless week. Bye.